I walked into the coffee shop on a Tuesday afternoon, laptop bag slung over my shoulder, desperate for both caffeine and human connection. For the third time that month, I had canceled plans with acquaintances because of work deadlines, and the irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, finally free with absolutely no one to talk to. The barista smiled politely as I ordered my usual, but that 30-second exchange would likely be the longest conversation I would have all day. Around me, other adults tapped away on keyboards or scrolled through phones, each in their own bubble of isolation. A group of 3 people laughed in the corner. Friends who had somehow managed to coordinate their schedules for this precious slice of togetherness. I settled into a table, opened my laptop, and found myself staring at my calendar instead of my work. My 30s had arrived with a sobering reality. Making friends as an adult wasn't just difficult, it felt nearly impossible. Between career demands, family responsibilities, and the perpetual exhaustion that comes with modern life, creating and maintaining friendships had become another task on an already overflowing to-do list. That afternoon in the coffee shop marked a turning point. I realized that if I continued down this path, waiting for friendship to happen naturally like it did in college or expecting people to simply make time for me, I would be waiting forever. The rules had changed, and I needed a new playbook for connection in a world where everyone, myself included, was legitimately chronically busy. Think back to childhood. Friendship was almost effortless. Proximity and shared activities were all it took. Want to play was the universal friendship starter. School provided a ready-made social structure with built-in repeated interactions. We saw the same people every day, shared experiences, and developed bonds through that constancy. As we move into adulthood, everything changes. Research by sociologist Gerald Mollenhorst from Utrecht University found that adults lose half their friends every 7 years. The structures that once supported our social lives, school, college, first jobs with fellow young professionals, fade away. We no longer have institutions forcing us together with peers at the same life stage with automatic daily contact. Instead, we enter a period dominated by what sociologists call institutional thinning. Our days become structured around work, family responsibilities, and individual pursuits rather than communal activities. The playground gets replaced by the office, where relationships are often transactional rather than based on authentic connection. Karen Patterson, a 34-year-old marketing executive in Boston, described this shift perfectly. In college, my door was always open, people would drop by, and spontaneous hangouts happened daily. Now I need to schedule a coffee date 3 weeks in advance, and there's a 50% chance someone will cancel because something came up with work or their kids. This transition happens alongside another critical change. Our identity becomes more firmly established. In our younger years, we were more adaptable, willing to try new activities or adjust our schedules for social opportunities. As adults, we develop stronger preferences, more defined personalities, and less flexibility, both practically and psychologically. The paradox emerges, precisely when we need meaningful connections to combat the stresses of adult life. Making those connections becomes exponentially more difficult. "I'm just so busy" has become the anthem of modern adulthood, a statement so common that we rarely question its validity or implications. But is everyone truly too busy for friendship? Or has busy become a socially acceptable way to decline social engagement without offending others? The truth lies somewhere in between. Time use researchers have found that Americans actually have more leisure time than they did 50 years ago, yet the perception of busyness has increased dramatically. This contradiction stems from several factors. First, our leisure time has become fragmented, scattered in small pockets throughout the day rather than consolidated blocks, making it harder to coordinate with others. We might have 30 minutes here or there, but aligning those brief windows with someone else's schedule becomes a logistical challenge. Second, the boundaries between work and personal life have blurred significantly. Even when physically away from work, many adults remain mentally tethered to professional responsibilities through smartphones and laptops. This always-on mentality makes it difficult to be fully present for social interactions. Third, decision fatigue plays a crucial role. After making countless decisions all day at work and home, The thought of organizing social activities feels like yet another task requiring energy we simply don't have. Passive activities like streaming television or scrolling through social media offer the path of least resistance. Diana Fletcher, a sociologist specializing in adult relationships, explains, "Many adults aren't necessarily busier in terms of actual hours committed, but they're experiencing unprecedented levels of cognitive load and decision fatigue. When every aspect of modern life requires active choices and management, from career paths to investment portfolios to parenting philosophies, social relationships often get relegated to the too hard basket. This creates a scenario where friendship becomes the easiest thing to postpone. Unlike work deadlines or family obligations, friendship rarely presents immediate consequences for neglect. The effects are gradual, cumulative, and often only recognized once loneliness has firmly taken hold." What makes this friendship drought particularly concerning isn't just the emotional impact, it's the documented health effects. A landmark meta-analysis published in PLOS Medicine reviewed 148 studies and found that strong social connections increase survival by 50%, making poor social relationships as damaging to physical health as smoking 15 cigarettes daily. Dr. Vivek Murthy, former U.S. Surgeon General, has called loneliness a public health epidemic, noting that chronic loneliness correlates with increased risk for cardiovascular disease, dementia, depression, anxiety, and even premature death. The mechanisms behind these effects are both psychological and physiological. Socially isolated individuals typically experience higher levels of stress hormones like cortisol, which can lead to inflammation and compromised immune function. Meanwhile, the absence of positive social feedback loops affects neurotransmitter function, potentially contributing to depression and anxiety. Kevin Patel learned this connection firsthand after moving to a new city for a promotion. "I was crushing it at work, got the corner office, but came home to an empty apartment every night. 6 months in, I started having panic attacks and couldn't figure out why. My doctor asked about my social life, and I realized I hadn't had a meaningful conversation with anyone outside of work in months. That was a wake-up call." The stakes of adult friendship extend beyond individual well-being to broader social cohesion. Communities with stronger social networks demonstrate greater resilience during crises, more effective problem-solving, and higher levels of civic engagement. As our social circles contract, so does our exposure to diverse perspectives and collective wisdom. Yet knowing the importance of friendship doesn't solve the practical challenge of forming connections in a world where scheduling conflicts abound and energy reserves run low. This brings us to the question that opens the next phase of our exploration. How do we create meaningful connections when everyone, including ourselves, has legitimate demands on their time and attention? What if everything we learned about making friends growing up actually sets us up for failure as adults? This question strikes at the heart of why so many adults struggle with connection despite sincerely wanting more meaningful relationships. Traditional friendship formation typically followed a predictable pattern: repeated spontaneous interactions in shared spaces leading to gradual disclosure and deepening trust. This model worked beautifully in environments like school, college, or early career settings where people naturally encountered each other regularly without explicit planning. When we try to apply this same model to adult life, we hit immediate obstacles. The first is what sociologists call the coordination problem, the logistical challenge of aligning schedules for that necessary repeated contact. Without institutional structures forcing regular interaction, friendships require intentional planning, which contradicts our ingrained expectation that real friendships happen organically. "I kept waiting to click with someone at work or in my neighborhood," explains Danielle Foster, a 37-year-old nurse and mother of 2. "But meaningful conversations never happened because we were always rushing between meetings or obligations. I realized I was waiting for a college-style friendship to materialize in an environment that couldn't possibly support it." This expectation gap leads to a second obstacle: the authenticity paradox. Many adults believe that explicitly seeking friendship or strategically nurturing connections somehow makes those relationships less genuine. We've internalized the romantic notion that true friendship just happens, causing us to feel uncomfortable approaching connection with intention or structure. Research by psychologist Jeffrey Hall at the University of Kansas challenges this notion. His studies found that it takes approximately 50 hours of interaction to move from acquaintance to casual friend, 90 hours to become a friend, and over 200 hours to develop a close friendship. These hours don't accumulate by accident in adult life. They require deliberate investment. This leads to a crucial insight. The spontaneity that characterized childhood friendships must be replaced by intentionality in adulthood. The most connected adults aren't those with more free time or naturally magnetic personalities. They're often those who have abandoned outdated expectations about how friendships should form. If intentionality replaces spontaneity in adult friendship, what replaces the gradual disclosure that naturally occurred during those long hours of proximity in earlier life stages? The answer lies in understanding how vulnerability functions in accelerated relationship development. Psychologist Arthur Aaron developed the concept of sustained, escalating, reciprocal, personalistic self-disclosure as a mechanism for rapidly developing closeness. His famous 36-question study demonstrated that guided mutual disclosure could create significant interpersonal closeness even between strangers. Yet, vulnerability carries higher perceived risks for adults than for children or young adults. We have established identities, professional reputations, and complex social networks that seem threatened by potential rejection. The fear of appearing needy, awkward, or inappropriate looms large in adult social interactions. This risk assessment is often skewed by what psychologists call the liking gap, the systematic tendency to underestimate how much others like us after initial interactions. Research by Erica Boothby and colleagues at Cornell University found that people consistently rated others' enjoyment of their company lower than those others actually reported. Kevin Patel experienced this firsthand. After moving to Denver, I invited a neighbor to grab a beer. The whole time I was overthinking everything I said, convinced I was boring him. Months later, when we had become good friends, he mentioned how refreshing that first conversation had been, because most people in the building just nodded politely in the elevator. The vulnerability equation in adult friendship contains three variables: the risk of rejection, the discomfort of disclosure, and the potential reward of connection. Most adults overestimate the first two variables while underestimating the third. This miscalculation is partly due to what psychologists call pluralistic ignorance, the erroneous belief that our internal experiences differ from others. In the context of adult friendship, we assume others are more socially fulfilled than they actually are, making us reluctant to express our own desire for connection. Survey data consistently shows this assumption is wrong. A 2021 American Perspective survey found that 49% of Americans reported having 3 or fewer close friends, with 12% saying they had none. These numbers have declined significantly since the same survey was conducted in 1990, indicating a widespread friendship recession that contradicts the perception that everyone else is fine. The strategic use of appropriate vulnerability becomes a powerful tool for accelerating connection in time-constrained adult relationships. But this raises another question. What forms of vulnerability are appropriate and effective in different contexts, and how do we calibrate disclosure to match the relationship stage? While it might seem unromantic to apply economic concepts to friendship, understanding the marketplace dynamics of social connection offers practical insights for adults navigating limited social opportunities. Every potential friendship involves 3 key factors: opportunity cost, investment return, and compatibility matching. The first refers to what we give up to invest in a particular relationship, including time that could be spent on other relationships or activities. The second involves the subjective value we receive from that investment. The third determines how efficiently our investment converts to meaningful connection. Adult friendship markets differ from earlier life stages in several important ways. First, the opportunity costs are significantly higher. Every hour spent developing a new friendship potentially takes time away from work, family, existing friends, or necessary self-care. This makes adults justifiably selective about where they invest their limited social capital. Second, the information available for compatibility assessment is often limited. In school or college, we observed potential friends across various situations over extended periods before deepening relationships. As adults, we make friendship decisions based on brief interactions that may not reveal true compatibility. Third, The investment return varies dramatically based on compatibility factors that aren't immediately obvious. While younger friendships often form around simple shared activities or circumstances, adult friendships that thrive typically align across multiple dimensions: values, communication styles, energy levels, and life priorities. Diana Fletcher discovered this through trial and error. I kept trying to maintain friendships with people I had little in common with beyond our kids being in the same class. The conversations felt draining rather than energizing. When I finally found friends who shared my values and communication style, maintaining those relationships actually gave me energy rather than depleting it. This perspective shifts how we should approach potential friendships. Rather than casting a wide net or forcing connections based on convenience alone, successful adult friendship formation requires strategic assessment of compatibility factors that predict relationship sustainability. Research by sociologist Rebecca G. Adams identifies 7 major factors that facilitate adult friendship formation: proximity, frequency of contact, disclosure, shared interests, shared history, homogeneity, similarity in background or demographics, and complementary needs. While all contribute to friendship potential, adults with limited social time should prioritize connections that score highly across multiple dimensions. This raises an intriguing possibility. What if the time constraints of adult life aren't solely obstacles to friendship, but also useful filtering mechanisms that help us identify high-compatibility connections worth pursuing? Technology has fundamentally transformed how adults form and maintain connections, creating both unprecedented opportunities and unique challenges. Understanding this digital paradox is essential for navigating modern friendship formation. On one hand, technology enables connections that would be impossible in previous generations. Apps like Meetup, Bumble BFF, and Friendr allow adults to find others with shared interests regardless of geographic proximity or social circles. Social media platforms facilitate maintaining weaker ties that might otherwise fade entirely and can gradually develop into stronger connections. Kevin Patel credits technology with rebuilding his social circle. After realizing how isolated I'd become, I joined a hiking group on Meetup. What started as monthly hikes with strangers turned into weekly gatherings with a core group. Our WhatsApp chat is active daily, even when we can't meet in person. However, technology also creates significant barriers to deep connection. Research by psychologist Sherry Tickle at MIT suggests that constant connectivity can create a lone-together phenomenon where people are physically present but psychologically absent during social interactions, diminishing their quality and impact. Digital communication also removes crucial elements of human connection. Studies show that face-to-face interaction activates neural synchrony, a mirroring of brain activity between people that doesn't occur to the same degree during video calls and is absent in text-based communication. This synchrony appears crucial for developing emotional resonance and deep trust. Additionally, social media creates distorted perceptions of others' social lives. Viewing curated highlights of acquaintances' social activities can trigger what psychologists call social comparison bias, leading to the erroneous conclusion that others are more socially fulfilled than they actually are. Diana Fletcher noticed this effect. I would see Instagram stories of acquaintances at parties and feel like I was the only one struggling to maintain a social life. When I actually started talking openly about friendship challenges, almost everyone admitted feeling the same way. The social media posts were giving all of us a skewed perception. Perhaps most significantly, technology has created a friendship model based on convenience rather than commitment. The ease of rescheduling or canceling plans with a quick text has reduced the social cost of reliability issues. While this flexibility can help busy adults maintain connections, it also undermines the consistency that builds trust and deepening intimacy. The key insight here isn't that technology is inherently good or bad for friendship, but that it requires intentional management. The most connected adults use technology strategically, as a supplement to rather than replacement for in-person interaction, as a tool for maintaining connection during busy periods rather than a primary relationship channel. This raises a crucial question that leads us to our turning point. How do we design a friendship approach that works with the realities of busy adult schedules rather than against them? The breakthrough moment in adult friendship comes when we stop fighting against the constraints of modern life and instead design connection strategies that work within them. This shift from passive hoping to active structuring transforms friendship from something that happens to us into something we consciously create. The structured friendship method integrates findings from relationship science, time management research, and real-world success patterns among highly connected adults. It consists of 5 interconnected principles that fundamentally change how we approach social connection. The first principle challenges the conventional wisdom that adult friendships should be spontaneous and flexible. In reality, spontaneity works against connection in busy lives. The alternative is strategic ritualization, creating regular, protected social time that becomes non-negotiable. Rituals differ from routines in their psychological significance. While routines are merely repeated actions, rituals carry meaning and identity. By elevating friendship activities from something we try to do when free to an essential part of who we are, they gain protection from the encroachment of other demands. Kevin Patel implemented this after several months of canceled plans. My hiking group now has a standing first Saturday commitment. We all block it months in advance, treating it like an unmovable work commitment. Surprisingly, when something becomes non-negotiable, you build your life around it rather than trying to fit it in. Research supports this approach. A longitudinal study by psychologists at the University of Oxford found that adults with regular ritualized social activities reported significantly higher relationship satisfaction and lower friendship turnover than those with more frequent but irregular social contact. The key components of successful friendship rituals include predictable timing, same day/time weekly, monthly, or quarterly, clear expectations around participation and cancellation, meaningful activities that strengthen group identity, minimal planning requirements. After the initial setup, Diana Fletcher created such a ritual with former colleagues. We have first Thursday, dinner at the same restaurant monthly. The reservation is permanent, the location never changes, and whoever can make it shows up. Some months it's all 6 of us, sometimes just 2, but the ritual continues regardless. Over 3 years, we've never had to cancel because the infrastructure is already in place. This approach directly counters the coordination problem that derails many adult friendships. Rather than requiring new decisions and arrangements for each interaction, ritualization creates a sustainable infrastructure for connection that withstands the pressures of busy schedules. The second principle addresses the time constraints inherent in adult life by focusing on the quality of interactions rather than their quantity. While conventional wisdom suggests frequent contact is necessary for friendship maintenance, research indicates that interaction quality and memorability have greater impact on relationship strength. Psychologist Jeffrey Hall's friendship development research found that while reaching close friendship requires approximately 200 hours of interaction, those hours have dramatically different impact depending on their quality. Deeply engaged, novel, or emotionally significant interactions contribute more to relationship development than routine encounters. This insight suggests a strategic approach. Rather than attempting to increase interaction frequency, often impossible with busy schedules, focus on designing high-intensity connection experiences that create relationship momentum. High-intensity interactions share several characteristics: full presence, no digital distractions, novel environments or activities, appropriate vulnerability and disclosure, shared challenges or learning, extended duration, when possible. Kevin Patel applied this principle through quarterly adventure weekends with friends. Instead of trying to meet weekly for quick coffees that kept getting canceled, 4 of us commit to 1 weekend per season. We rent a cabin, hike, cook together, and have the kinds of conversations that never happen during rushed meetups. Those weekends create enough connection to sustain us through busy periods. This approach works because it aligns with how memory and emotional bonding function. Our brains form stronger neural connections around novel, emotionally charged experiences than routine interactions. A single high-intensity friendship experience can create more relationship progress than multiple casual encounters. Diana Fletcher noticed this effect. I have friends I see monthly for deep, meaningful conversations, and acquaintances I run into weekly for superficial chats. The monthly friends feel much closer because of the quality of our limited time together. This principle doesn't eliminate the need for regular contact but changes its nature. Between high-intensity interactions, relationship maintenance can occur through briefer connections, text messages, quick phone calls, or social media interactions that require less coordination while sustaining the connection. The third principle addresses the efficiency of friendship investment by ensuring time is directed toward relationships with high compatibility and development potential. While this might initially seem calculating, it reflects the reality that adults cannot sustain the same quantity of developing friendships as during earlier life stages. Strategic compatibility filtering involves consciously assessing potential friendships across dimensions predictive of relationship success. 1. Values alignment. Shared core values create natural understanding and reduce conflict. 2. Energy pattern compatibility. Whether someone is energizing or draining to interact with. 3. Reciprocity potential. Their capacity and willingness to invest similarly in the relationship. 4. Logistical feasibility. Practical factors like proximity, schedule compatibility, and life stage. 5. Communication style. Similarities in disclosure comfort, conversation patterns, and conflict resolution. This assessment happens not through explicit questioning, but through attentive observation during initial interactions. The goal isn't perfect matching, but sufficient compatibility to create relationship sustainability. Kevin Patel realized the importance of energy compatibility. I used to feel guilty for not pursuing friendships with perfectly nice people who drained my energy. I've learned that with limited social time, I need friends who leave me feeling energized rather than depleted, even if I can't always articulate why the difference exists. This principle doesn't encourage snap judgments or excessive selectivity, but rather thoughtful discernment about relationship investment. Just as we wouldn't continue pursuing a romantic relationship with someone fundamentally incompatible, we should approach friendship with awareness of compatibility factors. The most important compatibility factors often differ by individual. Diana Fletcher discovered that schedule alignment was her critical factor. I'm a morning person who's exhausted by 8 p.m. I kept trying to maintain friendships with night owls who wanted to meet for late dinners, and it never worked. When I found friends who preferred morning hikes and brunches, our relationships flourished because the timing worked for my energy patterns. This principle acknowledges a difficult truth. In adulthood, having fewer, deeper friendships often creates more satisfaction than maintaining many superficial connections. Strategic filtering helps direct limited social energy toward relationships with the highest potential return in well-being and support. The fourth principle directly addresses the time scarcity challenge by integrating friendship development into existing activities rather than treating it as a separate category requiring additional time allocation. This approach is based on the concept of activity compounding, gaining multiple benefits from single-time investments. Rather than viewing friendship as competing with other life priorities, this principle looks for natural integration points where connection can occur alongside other necessary activities. Effective compound activities share several characteristics. They fulfill multiple needs simultaneously. They occur regularly for other reasons. They allow for meaningful interaction during the activity. They involve shared goals or experiences. Kevin Patel found his most sustainable friendships formed through compound activities. I joined a weekly community garden group because I wanted to grow vegetables anyway. 3 years later, some of my closest friendships have developed there. We're productive together, which eliminates the guilt I used to feel about just socializing when I had other responsibilities. Common compound activities include exercise partnerships, running groups, gym buddies, sports teams, skill development communities, language classes, creative workshops, parenting activities, family playdates, school volunteer committees, professional development groups, industry meetups, masterminds, service and volunteer organizations, spiritual or personal growth communities. The psychological advantage of compound activities extends beyond time efficiency. They create natural contexts for friendship development without the pressure of interactions focused solely on getting to know each other. The shared activity provides both conversation material and natural opportunities for cooperation that build trust. Diana Fletcher found this approach transformed her social life. As a single parent, I couldn't justify time away from my kids just for socializing. I started a monthly potluck dinner rotation with other families where the kids play while adults cook and eat together. It meets my parenting obligations while giving me adult connection, and the regular structure makes it sustainable. This principle also helps overcome the discomfort many adults feel about explicitly seeking friendship. Activity-based connections develop more naturally because the shared experience creates immediate common ground and purpose beyond the relationship itself. The fifth principle addresses the acceleration of trust and intimacy through appropriately calibrated self-disclosure. In childhood and young adulthood, trust typically develops gradually through extended shared experiences. Adult friendships, with their time limitations, require a more strategic approach to building emotional connection. Vulnerability calibration involves intentionally adjusting self-disclosure to match the relationship stage while accelerating the natural progression of intimacy through strategic openness. This doesn't mean forced or inappropriate sharing, but rather conscious decisions about when and how to move beyond surface-level interaction. Research by psychologist Arthur Aaron shows that mutual disclosure of progressively more personal information creates rapid feelings of closeness, even between strangers. The key factors are reciprocity, both people sharing, progressivity, gradually increasing intimacy, and authenticity, genuine rather than performative disclosure. Kevin Patel discovered the power of calibrated vulnerability after years of surface-level workplace friendships. I realized I had known my colleague Marcus for 5 years but never had a real conversation. When I mentioned struggling with work-life balance during a lunch break, he opened up about his similar challenges. That single authentic exchange did more for our friendship than years of small talk. Effective vulnerability calibration follows a pattern. 1. Begin with low-risk, moderate-depth disclosures, sharing genuine challenges, opinions, or feelings that go slightly beyond conventional small talk but don't require significant trust. 2. Observe reciprocity signals, noticing whether the other person responds with similar level disclosure or retreats to safer topics. 3. Match and slightly escalate disclosure depth when reciprocity signals are positive. 4. Respect boundaries when encountering non-reciprocity, without retreating entirely from authenticity. Diana Fletcher applied this approach with a neighbor. After superficial interactions for months, I mentioned feeling overwhelmed balancing work and home life. She immediately related with her own struggles, and that opened the door to more meaningful conversations. Within weeks, our relationship had more depth than friendships I'd had for years, where we never moved beyond pleasantries. The most effective vulnerability involves sharing genuine current experiences rather than distant history, focusing on universal human experiences rather than highly unusual circumstances, and balancing disclosure of challenges with positive aspects of life. This principle recognizes that while excessive or inappropriate vulnerability can damage potential relationships, strategic authenticity accelerates connection in ways particularly valuable for time-constrained adults. The structured friendship method fundamentally reshapes how we think about and pursue adult connection. Rather than viewing friendship as something that happens to us when conditions are perfect, it positions social connection as a life domain requiring the same intentional design and management we apply to careers, fitness, or personal development. This paradigm shift has far-reaching implications for how we approach multiple aspects of adult life. The first implication involves challenging the too busy for friends narrative that dominates adult social discourse. Rather than accepting busyness as an immutable barrier to connection, the structured friendship method recognizes it as a design constraint that requires strategic adaptation. This perspective shift changes how we communicate about social priorities. Instead of saying, "I'm too busy for social activities," we might say, "I'm being selective about how I invest my limited social time." This subtle reframing acknowledges agency rather than victimhood in our connection choices. Kevin Patel noticed how this shift changed his social opportunities. When I stopped saying, "I'm slammed with work," and started saying, "I'm protecting Wednesday evenings for social connection," people actually started inviting me to more things. My language was signaling availability rather than perpetual busyness. The busyness reframing also helps identify when we're using time constraints as a convenient excuse rather than addressing deeper social anxiety or connection hesitancy. Many adults find it easier to cite external constraints than acknowledge internal barriers to reaching out. Diana Fletcher recognized this pattern in herself. "I realized I was saying, 'I'm too busy,' when what I really meant was, 'I'm afraid of rejection,' or 'I'm not sure how to initiate.' Acknowledging those real fears helped me address them directly instead of hiding behind the busyness excuse. This reframing extends to how we perceive others' availability as well. The assumption that everyone is too busy for new connections often becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that prevents initiation. Recognizing that most adults desire more meaningful connection but struggle with similar barriers creates space for more authentic conversations about social needs. The second major implication positions friendship development not as a luxury activity but as an essential component of physical and psychological well-being, as fundamental as exercise, nutrition, or sleep. This perspective shift elevates friendship from something we pursue, if there's time, to a non-negotiable element of a healthy life. Just as we wouldn't say, "I'm too busy to sleep," without recognizing the serious consequences. Framing friendship as essential self-care changes how we prioritize connection. Research strongly supports this positioning. Beyond the significant mortality impact of social connection mentioned earlier, studies demonstrate that quality relationships buffer against stress, improve cardiovascular health, enhance immune function, and protect cognitive abilities during aging. Kevin Patel integrated this perspective into his wellness routine. "I now treat my social health like physical health, something that requires regular attention and investment. My calendar has protected friendship time just like it has protected workout time. Both are non-negotiable parts of staying healthy." This framing helps overcome the guilt many adults feel about prioritizing social activities when other responsibilities compete for attention. Recognizing connection as a health requirement rather than an indulgence validates its importance and makes it easier to establish boundaries that protect social time. Diana Fletcher experienced this shift after health challenges. "After my doctor literally prescribed more social connection for my high blood pressure, I stopped feeling selfish about my monthly dinner group. I now understand that maintaining friendships isn't separate from taking care of my health. It's an integral part of it." This perspective also encourages a more intentional approach to evaluating our social well-being. Just as we might track physical health metrics, regularly assessing our connection quality and diversity becomes part of holistic health management. The third implication moves us from simply maintaining existing connection patterns to innovating new relationship models suited to contemporary adult life. Rather than trying to recreate friendship forms from earlier life stages, this approach encourages designing novel connection structures that address modern constraints. Relationship innovation involves questioning assumptions about what friendship should look like and exploring alternatives that better serve current needs. This might include creating defined friendship categories with different expectations, e.g., activity partners, deep confidants, occasional but meaningful connections. Developing explicit agreements about communication frequency and methods. Establishing alternative gathering formats that accommodate diverse schedules and energy levels. Building multi-generational connection circles that provide different types of support. Kevin Patel applied relationship innovation after repeated frustration. "My friends and I kept trying to get together for dinner, but coordinating 6 busy schedules was impossible. We switched to a drop-in breakfast club model where we meet at the same diner every Saturday from 8 to 10 a.m. People come when they can, stay as long as they can, and there's no pressure for everyone to be there every time. This completely changed our ability to maintain connection." Innovation also extends to how we think about friendship development timelines. Rather than expecting relationships to follow traditional progression patterns, innovative approaches might include accelerated intimacy methods, connection sprints, short periods of intensive interaction, or asymmetrical friendship models where interaction frequency varies dramatically over time based on availability. Diana Fletcher created such an innovation. "My seasonal friendship group only meets in person quarterly for a full weekend retreat, then stays connected through a group chat between gatherings. It's completely different from how I thought friendship was supposed to work, but it fits our lives and creates meaningful connection despite geographic distance and busy schedules." This innovative mindset liberates adults from feeling they're doing friendship wrong when traditional models fail and encourages creative solutions that address contemporary challenges without sacrificing connection quality. The fourth implication involves a fundamental shift in friendship communication patterns. Traditional friendship models often rely heavily on implicit understanding, assumed availability, and indirect expression of needs. The structured friendship method replaces these with more explicit communication better suited to time-constrained relationships. This communication shift includes directly expressing friendship interest rather than hinting or hoping, explicitly discussing relationship expectations and boundaries, clearly communicating availability limitations without apology, naming the current friendship stage rather than leaving it ambiguous, providing specific rather than general invitations. Kevin Patel found direct communication transformed his friendship success rate. I used to say vague things like, "We should hang out sometime," that never materialized. Now I say, "I've enjoyed talking with you and would like to get to know you better. Would you be interested in grabbing coffee next Tuesday?" The specificity and honesty make all the difference. This directness extends to maintaining relationships through busy periods. Rather than allowing connections to fade due to unspoken assumptions, explicit communication about temporary availability limitations with clear reconnection plans preserves relationship continuity. Diana Fletcher applied this during an intensive work project. Instead of just disappearing from social life, I messaged close friends explaining I had a 2-month work crunch but wanted to maintain our connection. We scheduled a reunion dinner in advance for when the project ended. That advance planning and honesty preserved relationships that might otherwise have suffered. The communication shift also involves greater comfort with articulating friendship needs. While this might initially feel vulnerable, clearly expressing what we value and need in friendships allows for more sustainable relationships than hoping others will intuitively understand and meet unstated expectations. This explicit communication model contradicts cultural narratives suggesting that real connections shouldn't require conversation about relationship parameters. In reality, the most resilient adult friendships often have the clearest mutual understanding of expectations, boundaries, and communication patterns. The final implication involves changing how we measure successful adult friendships. Traditional metrics often focus on frequency, how often we interact, longevity, how long we've known someone, or comparison with past relationship patterns. These metrics frequently lead to a sense of failure in the adult friendship domain. The structured friendship method proposes alternative success metrics better aligned with adult relationship realities. Connection quality over interaction frequency, measuring meaningful engagement rather than how often we see someone. Support exchange over time investment, assessing the practical and emotional support exchanged rather than hours spent together. Need fulfillment over friendship quantity, evaluating whether our overall social connections meet our needs rather than counting individual friendships. Intentionality over spontaneity, valuing deliberate connection efforts rather than effortless or accidental interactions. Kevin Patel redefined his friendship success metrics. I used to feel like a failure because I didn't have a large friend group getting together weekly like in college. Now I measure success by whether I have meaningful connection in my life, regardless of what form it takes. My monthly hiking group and 2 close friends I see regularly provide more authentic connection than the larger but shallower social circle I thought I was supposed to have. This redefinition also involves recognizing the appropriateness of different relationship types for different life stages. Rather than judging current connections against nostalgic memories of past friendship forms, successful adult friendship acknowledges the changing nature of relationship needs and structures across the lifespan. Diana Fletcher experienced the liberation of this perspective shift. When I stopped comparing my current friendships to my college relationships, I could appreciate the depth and maturity of my adult connections. They might involve less time together, but they offer more meaningful support and understanding than those earlier relationships that seemed so ideal in memory. This redefinition helps adults recognize and celebrate the unique qualities of mature friendships, their intentionality, resilience through life transitions, and capacity for both practical and emotional support, rather than feeling perpetually inadequate compared to idealized earlier connection forms. As we conclude our exploration of adult friendship in a busy world, we arrive at a fundamental insight. Meaningful connection in modern adulthood requires shifting from passive relationship hope to active friendship design. The key isn't finding more time but architecting social structures that work within existing constraints. The friendship design framework provides a practical approach for implementing this insight through 3 interconnected components: connection audit, relationship architecture, and implementation systems. The process begins with honestly assessing your current relationship landscape and specific friendship needs. This audit involves evaluating your unique social needs based on personality, circumstances, and life stage, current relationship assets, existing connections with development potential, specific connection gaps, what types of relationships are missing, practical constraints, realistic time availability, geographic limitations, energy patterns, internal barriers, social anxiety, rejection sensitivity, friendship beliefs. Kevin Patel's connection audit revealed surprising insights. I discovered I didn't need more casual acquaintances. I had plenty through work. What I lacked were activity partners for outdoor adventures and one or two deeper confidants. This clarity helped me target my friendship efforts rather than pursuing connections that wouldn't actually fulfill my needs. The audit also involves identifying your friendship fingerprint, the unique pattern of social preferences that influence what connections will be sustainable for you. This includes communication style preferences, ideal interaction frequency, energy patterns, and specific activities that reliably energize rather than drain you. Diana Fletcher identified her friendship fingerprint. I realized I'm energized by one-on-one or small group interactions with depth, quickly depleted by large social gatherings, and need significant recovery time between social engagements. This self-knowledge helped me design connection strategies that worked with my patterns rather than against them. This audit phase transforms vague dissatisfaction with social life into specific, addressable gaps and opportunities, creating the foundation for strategic relationship development. With clear insights from the connection audit, the next phase involves designing friendship structures aligned with both your needs and real-world constraints. This architecture includes selecting appropriate relationship development vehicles, activities, communities, or platforms suited to your specific friendship gaps, creating rituals and systems that automate regular connection, establishing boundaries that protect friendship investments from competing priorities, designing communication templates and habits that support connection maintenance, developing contingency plans for high-demand periods. Kevin Patel's relationship architecture included specific structures. I created 3 friendship pillars: a monthly hiking group for activity-based connection, a weekly lunch with a colleague who shared my interest in psychology, and a quarterly weekend with friends from college. Each serves different needs and has its own sustainability system. Effective relationship architecture anticipates obstacles rather than assuming smooth implementation. This includes identifying potential barriers to maintaining connections and creating specific strategies to address them before they arise. Diana Fletcher built such contingencies into her architecture. I know December is always overwhelming with work and family obligations, so our friend group now does our holiday gathering in January instead. Planning around predictable busy periods rather than fighting against them has been game-changing for maintaining consistency. This architectural approach treats friendship as a system to be designed rather than a random outcome to be hoped for, significantly increasing the probability of creating sustainable connection despite the constraints of adult life. The final component involves creating practical systems that translate relationship architecture into consistent action. These implementation systems address the gap between intention and behavior that derails many adult friendship efforts. Effective implementation systems include calendar blocking for social priorities before other demands fill available time, communication templates that reduce the activation energy required for reaching out, decision rules that clarify when and how to prioritize connection, environmental adjustments that facilitate social interaction, progress tracking mechanisms that maintain awareness of relationship development, accountability structures that support consistent action. Kevin Patel created such systems. I have recurring calendar appointments for key relationships, friendship maintenance blocked every Sunday evening when I send check-in texts to key people, and quarterly relationship reviews where I assess which connections need more investment. These systems ensure friendship doesn't get lost in the daily rush. Implementation systems are particularly important during life transitions when established connection patterns are disrupted. Having explicit systems rather than relying on habits or circumstances ensures continuity through these vulnerable periods. Diana Fletcher developed transition-specific systems. When I changed jobs, I created a specific relationship transfer plan with scheduled check-ins with former colleagues I wanted to maintain connections with, rather than letting those friendships fade by default. Having an explicit system made all the difference. The implementation component recognizes that even the best friendship intentions and designs fail without practical systems that bridge the gap between knowing what matters and consistently acting on that knowledge. The friendship design framework represents a fundamental shift from viewing adult friendship as a spontaneous occurrence to treating it as an essential life domain requiring intentional design and management. This approach doesn't diminish the authentic emotional connection at friendship's core, but rather creates reliable structures that allow that connection to flourish despite the constraints of adult life. Implementing this framework doesn't happen overnight. It typically begins with small experiments in one area, perhaps creating a single friendship ritual, practicing more direct communication with existing connections, or joining one compound activity aligned with friendship needs. Kevin Patel started with just one implementation. I began with a simple Sunday evening routine where I would reach out to 2 people I wanted to strengthen connections with. That tiny habit led to more consistent interaction, which gradually developed into deeper friendships. Small systems create compound relationship returns over time. The most significant barrier to applying this framework isn't typically time limitations but rather resistance to treating friendship as something that can and should be consciously designed. Overcoming the cultural narrative that real connections happen effortlessly without planning or intention opens the door to creating truly sustainable adult friendships. Diana Fletcher experienced this mindset shift. I initially felt awkward being so intentional about friendship, like I was treating relationships as a project. But I realized that in adulthood, the choice isn't between engineered versus natural connections, but between designed relationships versus no meaningful relationships at all. Once I embraced strategic connection as a valid approach, my social life transformed. The friendship design framework isn't about removing the humanity from connection, but about creating the conditions where meaningful relationships can thrive within the complex reality of adult life. When we shift from passive waiting to active design in our approach to friendship, we discover that connection remains possible, and perhaps becomes even more meaningful, despite the busyness that defines modern adulthood. Adult friendship in a busy world ultimately requires accepting a paradox. The most natural feeling connections often require the most intentional structures. By embracing this reality rather than fighting against it, we can create social lives that sustain us through the challenges of adulthood, while honoring the authentic human connection that makes life meaningful. Connection isn't something we find time for. It's something we design into the architecture of our lives, transforming friendship from a casualty of adult busyness into a sustaining force that helps us navigate life's complexities with greater resilience, joy, and meaning.